My only son's wedding day shattered when I overheard his fiancée call him a meal ticket and openly mock me, even calculating when I'd die for her inheritance. Wedding favors crashed from my hands, but a quiet resolve formed. She had no idea the woman listening would soon expose her every secret. This is my story. Like, share, and let me know where you're listening from. The delicate aroma of lavender and vanilla filled my kitchen, mingling with the scent of melted wax. My hands, calloused from years of tending to life, now carefully tied silk ribbons around miniature candles. Each one was a wedding favor for my only son Arthur and his beautiful fiancée, Celeste. My heart swelled with a familiar maternal ache, a mix of joy for his new beginning and a wistful acknowledgement of a chapter closing. I imagined Arthur's face when he saw them, perhaps even Celeste's appreciative smile. She had such a dazzling smile. I was in my sunny breakfast nook, a space usually reserved for quiet mornings and cups of tea, but today it was transformed into a miniature assembly line of love. The door to the living room was ajar, and I could hear Celeste's bright, bubbly voice, punctuated by the laughter of her two bridesmaids, who were supposedly helping her with some final details for the bridal shower. I had offered my home for the gathering, always eager to lend a hand to be included. "Oh my God, you guys," Celeste giggled, her voice carrying clearly through the open doorway. "The thought of a honeymoon with Arthur? I mean, I'll need a blindfold to survive it, honestly. Thank goodness his family has money. That's the real prize, right?" My hands froze, a perfectly tied bow slipping from my grasp. The words hit me like a physical blow. A blindfold? For Arthur? My sweet, kind, adoring son? My heart constricted, an icy grip tightening around it. I strained to hear more, my breath catching in my throat. "Seriously, though," Celeste continued, her tone shifting, becoming more calculating. "Arthur's a meal ticket. Let's be real. And your soon-to-be mother-in-law, Evelyn? She's sweet, but she's going to be a problem. So, hovering, we need to set some serious boundaries. She's pathetic, really." Pathetic. The word echoed in the sudden silence of the breakfast nook. Pathetic. Me. Evelyn, the woman who had poured her entire being into raising Arthur, who had welcomed Celeste into her home and heart with open arms. It felt like I was a little girl again, standing on the playground, waiting to be picked for a game, only to be dismissed, unwanted, last. "I've already got it mapped out," Celeste declared, her voice laced with an almost cruel delight. "Holidays will be alternating, of course. Christmas at their place one year, ours the next. And when it's their year, Evelyn can spend Christmas with her book club. Or maybe she has some other friends she can annoy." The bridesmaids snickered, a chorus of shallow amusement that amplified my pain. "I mean, are you even attracted to him, Celeste?" one of the bridesmaids asked, a hint of genuine curiosity in her voice. Celeste let out a dismissive snort. "Attracted? Please, he's fine, tolerable. But his family's money, that makes everything more than tolerable. It makes it fantastic." A tremor ran through me, my fingers still clutching a half-finished favor, spasmed. The small glass jar, adorned with a delicate ribbon, slipped. It clattered to the floor, rolling beneath the table with a soft thud. I held my breath, praying it hadn't shattered, praying the noise hadn't given me away. The conversation in the living room continued, oblivious. They hadn't heard. I was safe for now in my horrified anonymity. "Can you imagine her reception speech?" another bridesmaid cackled, all teary-eyed about her precious Arthur. "Ugh, don't remind me," Celeste groaned. "Just another hurdle to get through. Honestly, the sooner she kicks the bucket, the better. Less drama, more inheritance. I've already scoped out her will, thanks to Arthur's loose lips. She's got a decent amount tucked away." My blood ran cold. Inherit from my death? She was already planning for my demise? A grim, sick sensation twisted in my stomach. "How long do you give her, then?" the first bridesmaid teased. Celeste paused, a thoughtful, chilling hum in her voice. 10 years, maybe 15 if she's unlucky, and those organic vegetables actually work. She lives a pretty sedentary lifestyle, all those crafts and quiet evenings. She laughed, a sound that grated against my raw nerves. My quiet evenings, my crafts, the very things she dismissed as pathetic, were now being used to calculate my life expectancy. I swallowed, the taste of betrayal bitter in my mouth. I had contributed so much to this wedding, a significant portion of my savings actually. The caterer, the florist, the down payment on the venue. I had done it all out of love, out of a profound desire to see my son happy, to welcome his chosen partner into our family. Now I felt like a foolish, exploited mark. "You're going to hell, Celeste," one of the bridesmaids quipped, but her tone held more admiration than disapproval. Celeste just laughed, a rich, unapologetic sound. "Maybe, but I'll be rich in hell." That was it, the final crushing blow, the sheer, breathtaking cruelty, the unabashed avarice. I couldn't take another second. My hand instinctively reached for the handle of the back door. As I gently turned it, preparing to make my escape, I heard the faint rustle of fabric. Celeste was heading towards the kitchen. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had to go. Now. I pulled the door open just enough to slip out, closing it silently behind me. I didn't glance back. I simply walked, then ran. To my car. My hands fumbled with the keys, my vision blurring. I started the engine, the roar of the exhaust a welcome sound that drowned out the echo of Celeste's laughter. The drive home was a blur of tears and choke sobs. The meticulously manicured lawns of my neighborhood, the familiar curve of the road, all melted into an indistinguishable mess. My son, my Arthur, was marrying a predator. A calculating, heartless woman who saw him as nothing more than a means to an end, and me as an obstacle to be endured and eventually profited from. The weight of this betrayal, this monstrous deception, was suffocating. I pulled into my driveway, the engine still running for a long moment as I simply sat there, tears streaming down my face. How could I tell Arthur? How could I reveal the true nature of the woman he loved without destroying his trust in me, without shattering his world? He would accuse me of jealousy, of bitterness. He loved her, or at least he thought he did. By the time dawn painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and pale gold, I had stopped crying. My eyes were swollen, my head throbbed, but a cold, hard resolve had settled deep within me. This wasn't about anger anymore, or even hurt. This was about protecting my son. This was about justice. The impossible decision had been made. I would uncover Celeste's true identity. Every lie, every deception, every carefully constructed facade would be revealed. The rehearsal dinner was pure torture. The elegant Italian restaurant, bathed in soft romantic lighting, felt like a stage for Celeste's most brilliant performance. She floated from table to table, a vision in a blush-colored dress, her laughter bright and melodic. She held Arthur's hand constantly, gazing up at him with eyes full of what appeared to be adoration. Every gesture, every murmured word, was perfectly calibrated to convey the image of a devoted fiancé, eagerly anticipating a lifetime with her love. To anyone else, she was simply radiant, deeply in love. To me, she was a meticulously crafted illusion, and I felt the weight of her deceit pressing down on me, suffocating. During the toast, Arthur spoke first, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke of his love for Celeste and his gratitude for our family. Then Celeste stood, gracefully accepting the microphone. Her eyes found mine across the room. She glided toward our table, Arthur beaming proudly beside her. She took my hand in hers, squeezing it gently, warmly. "Evelyn," she began, her voice quivering slightly, "you are truly a blessing. More than a mother-in-law, you have become a true mother figure to me." A wave of murmurs and gentle applause rippled through the room. My smile was a mask, frozen in place, my hand numb in her deceptively soft grip. The irony was a bitter taste on my tongue. She continued, painting a vivid picture of domestic bliss that made my stomach churn. "I can't wait to learn all of Evelyn's wonderful family recipes," she cooed, casting a warm glance at Arthur. "And when Arthur and I have children, I want them to know the same boundless love and warmth that Evelyn has always shown." More applause, more knowing smiles from the guests who thought they were witnessing the forging of a beautiful new family bond. My heart ached, not for myself, but for Arthur, who drank in every word, every false promise with such earnest joy. Later, as the dinner began to wind down and guests mingled, I found myself near the ladies' room, pretending to fix my lipstick in a small mirror. Celeste's voice, hushed but distinct, drifted from inside. She was speaking to her maid of honor. "Honestly, this whole thing is just paperwork," she whispered, a dry, dismissive tone replacing the earlier sweetness. "The rings, the vows, it's all just a means to an end. Once it's done, I can finally breathe." Then a faint scoff. "And as for Evelyn, she's harmless. A bit clingy, but harmless. I'll set her straight after the wedding. Boundaries, she'll learn." My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to remain still, to not make a sound. I slipped away before they emerged, my resolve hardening further. The next morning, the day before the wedding, I was at the office of Detective Miller. The sign on the door was understated, the building unremarkable, but the reputation was solid. I felt utterly out of my depth. A 65-year-old woman, usually concerned with her garden and her book club, now hiring a private investigator. My sleep-deprived eyes burned, but my mind was clearer than it had been in days. Detective Miller was a man of quiet competence, his gaze steady and observant behind wire-rimmed glasses. His office was organized, albeit a little cluttered with files and discreet technology. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, gesturing to a worn leather chair. "How can I help you?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need you to uncover everything about Celeste Michelle Grant," I stated, my voice surprisingly firm, despite the tremor in my hands. Everything, her background, her finances, her past relationships, any secrets she might be hiding. I need to know the truth. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of concern in his expression. "Everything, Mrs. Hayes? And the wedding is tomorrow, I believe?" "Yes, tomorrow," it affirmed, my voice cracking slightly with the urgency I couldn't contain. "I know it's an impossible time frame, but I need it. Please." Detective Miller leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "Mrs. Hayes, I have to warn you, sometimes the truth is harder to live with than the uncertainty. Once you open Pandora's box, there's no closing it." His words hung in the air, but they only served to strengthen my resolve. I remembered Celeste's cold calculations about my lifespan, her cheerful admission of being rich in hell. Uncertainty? That was a luxury I couldn't afford, not with my son's future at stake. "I understand," I said, meeting his gaze directly, "but I have to know. I have to protect my son." I began to give him the details I knew. Celeste Michelle Grant, 26 years old. She says she's an event planner, but I've never seen her truly work. She has expensive tastes, always designer labels, yet she claims to have no close family beyond a distant aunt. No siblings, no parents she ever speaks of. I paused, realizing my own limitations. "I'm not very good with social media, Mr. Miller, but I imagine that's where a lot of people's lives are nowadays." He nodded. "Don't worry, Mrs. Hayes, we'll handle the digital footprints. The lack of close family, the expensive tastes without a clear income source, those are certainly points of interest. But working through the night, as in tonight, it's an aggressive timeline. Can you do it?" I pleaded. He considered me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I can try. My team and I will do our absolute best. But if we find anything substantial, anything that would definitively cast doubt, are you prepared to delay the wedding?" My heart squeezed. This was the crux of it all. "Arthur is deeply in love with her," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. "He adores her. If I just told him what I overheard without irrefutable proof, he would never forgive me. He would think I was jealous, trying to sabotage his happiness. It would destroy our relationship, and he'd still marry her anyway. I need something undeniable, Mr. Miller. Something he can't refute." He understood. The look in his eyes told me he saw the desperation, the maternal anguish that drove me. "We'll be in touch," he said, reaching for a notepad. "Keep your phone close and try to get some rest, Mrs. Hayes. You'll need it." The shrill ring of my phone sliced through the pre-dawn quiet at precisely 6 a.m. I didn't jump. I had been awake for hours, my mind a relentless carousel of anxious thoughts and desperate prayers. My body felt heavy, but my heart raced with a frantic energy. It was Detective Miller. I answered on the first ring, my voice tight with anticipation. "Mr. Miller, any news?" Mrs. Hayes, his voice was calm, professional, yet tinged with a gravity that sent a chill down my spine. We have a lot to discuss, and unfortunately, it's not good. Just tell me, I urged, my grip on the phone tightening. Celeste Michelle Grant, he began, has been married not once, but twice before. Both times to significantly older, wealthy men. Both marriages ended in divorce within 2 years. And in both cases, Mrs. Grant walked away with substantial financial settlements. The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. Married twice? Celeste had told Arthur, my son, that she had never been serious with anyone, that he was her first true love. He had glowed when he recounted her words to me, believing himself to be the man who had finally captured her elusive heart. The deception was breathtaking, a calculated lie that underscored the depth of her manipulation. Tell me everything, I whispered, my voice barely audible. The first husband was a Mr. Thompson, Detective Miller continued, a real estate developer, 53 years old at the time of their marriage. That was 5 years ago. Their divorce was finalized 18 months later. She received $500,000. $500,000. My head spun. Her second husband was a Mr. Davies, he went on, a tech executive, 45. That marriage lasted just shy of 2 years. She walked away with $700,000. $700,000. My mind struggled to process the numbers, the sheer audacity of it all. This wasn't just a gold digger. This was a professional. She was careful, Miller explained. After each divorce, she legally changed her name. First from Thompson to Davies, then from Davies back to her mother's maiden name, Grant. It's a clever way to obscure her past, to create a fresh identity with each new target. Grant, her maiden name, she claimed. It was all a lie. My stomach churned. Her job, I asked, suddenly remembering her vague explanation of being an event planner. Her marketing degree is legitimate, Miller confirmed, but her job is part-time, pays barely $30,000 a year. Our financial analysis shows she's been steadily burning through those settlement funds. She's deep in credit card debt, Mrs. Hayes, and she needs another wealthy husband urgently. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The expensive clothes, the lack of visible income, the hurried wedding. Arthur wasn't just a meal ticket. He was her emergency exit from financial ruin. There's more, Miller said, his voice softening slightly. We spoke with both ex-husbands, discreetly, of course. They both reported similar patterns: emotional manipulation, a gradual isolation from their friends and family, and during the divorce proceedings, even threats of suicide if they didn't comply with her demands for money. My breath hitched. Suicide threats. This wasn't just about money for Celeste. This was about power, control, and a chilling willingness to inflict emotional damage. She wasn't merely a gold digger. She was dangerous. The word echoed in the quiet of my kitchen, resonating with a terrifying truth. My son, my kind, trusting Arthur, was about to marry a dangerous woman. Mr. Miller, I managed, my voice strained. Can you send me everything? The marriage certificates, the divorce records, any court documents? They're being compiled now, he assured me. All the supporting documents. I'll have them sent to your email within the hour. It'll be a password-protected file. You'll have irrefutable proof, Mrs. Hayes. Irrefutable proof. I looked at the clock on my wall, 6:15 a.m. The wedding was scheduled for noon, 6 hours. 6 hours to act, to dismantle a carefully constructed deception, to save my son from a fate I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. The immense burden of that realization pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. My first instinct was to call Arthur, to wake him, to tell him everything, to somehow convey the urgency, the horror of what I had just learned. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed his number. It rang twice, then went straight to voicemail. Hey, it's Arthur. Leave a message. Today's a big day. His voice, vibrant and full of unbridled joy, echoed in the receiver. He was probably already at the venue, surrounded by groomsmen, caught up in the exhilarating rush of his wedding day. He wouldn't be checking his phone. My hand dropped, the phone clattering against the kitchen counter. How could I reach him? How could I explain this over the phone without him dismissing it as a desperate attempt from a jealous mother? I needed to be face to face to show him the cold hard evidence. I walked to my bedroom, my movements stiff and robotic. My wedding dress, a beautiful sage green gown I had chosen with such hope, hung waiting. My hair, usually a simple routine, now felt like an impossible task. My makeup lay untouched. How could I prepare for a celebration when my world felt like it was crumbling? How could I smile, make small talk, and pretend that everything was fine? I looked at my reflection in the mirror, my eyes red-rimmed and shadowed. This wasn't just about stopping a wedding. This was about protecting my son's heart, his future, his very safety. The decision I was about to make would change everything. Forever. There was no turning back. The manila envelope, thick with pages, lay open on my bed. Marriage certificates, divorce decrees, bank statements, legal documents. The cold, irrefutable proof of Celeste's calculated deceptions. I traced the unfamiliar names on the papers, the dates, the staggering sums. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a righteous fury. I had considered confronting Arthur privately, but the thought of Celeste manipulating him, twisting his emotions, convincing him that I was the villain, was unbearable. No, this had to be public. This had to be undeniable. She had to be exposed in a way that left no room for her insidious charm to weave its spells. I arrived early at the Riverside Country Club, the opulent venue Celeste had insisted upon. $50,000 for decorations alone, she had proudly informed me, a sum that now grated on my nerves. The grand ballroom, with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers, was adorned with an extravagant display of white roses and flowing silk, a testament to Celeste's expensive tastes and my son's generosity. The air hummed with pre-wedding anticipation, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me. Eleanor, the event coordinator, a whirlwind of efficiency, greeted me with a warm smile. "Mrs. Hayes, everything is perfect, isn't it?" I returned her smile, a practiced, brittle thing. "Eleanor, yes, absolutely beautiful. I just wanted to confirm something." I'd love to say a few words later, as the mother of the groom. Would that be possible? Her eyes lit up. "Oh, absolutely. How lovely. We have the father of the bride speaking first, then the best man and maid of honor. We can easily slot you in right after the father of the bride." "A special touch," she gushed. "Perfect," I said, a knot of dread and resolve tightening in my stomach. "Thank you, Eleanor." As the clock ticked closer to 3, guests began to arrive. The garden, lush and vibrant under the midday sun, filled with the murmur of excited voices, the rustle of fine clothing, and the genuine laughter of friends and family. They were all here to celebrate love, completely unaware of the drama that was about to unfold. Each smiling face was another layer of my resolve, another reason why this deception could not stand. At 3:00 p.m., the grand doors swung open. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered crowd. Celeste appeared, a vision in an elaborate ivory gown that seemed to float around her. Her veil, adorned with delicate lace, cascaded behind her as she began her slow, graceful walk down the aisle. She truly looked like a fairy tale princess, radiant and ethereal. My gaze, however, was fixed on Arthur. His face, usually so composed, was alight with an unguarded emotion I rarely saw. Pure joy, absolute adoration. He believed with every fiber of his being that this woman was his soulmate, his destiny. A sharp pang of agony shot through me, seeing the depth of his innocent love. It made what I was about to do even more painful, yet utterly necessary. The ceremony proceeded with polished perfection. When it came to the vows, Celeste delivered hers flawlessly. Her voice, soft and melodious, spoke of eternal love, of building a family, of gratitude for Arthur, and even for me, his mother, for welcoming her into this new life. She looked so earnest, so sincere, that I could see tears in the eyes of many of the 300 guests. I watched her, a hollow ache in my chest, knowing that these were not vows spoken from the heart, but a performance perfected over time, already delivered to 2 other men before Arthur. The reception began, a lavish affair in the ballroom. I sat at the head table, a silent observer. Celeste, now officially Mrs. Hayes, played the role of the grateful, charming new daughter-in-law to perfection. She laughed at Arthur's jokes, made polite conversation with the aunts and uncles, and even squeezed my hand again, telling me how truly happy she was. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. After the main course, the clinking of a fork against a glass signaled the start of the toasts. Arthur's best man, Ben, delivered a humorous and heartfelt speech. Then Celeste's maid of honor, a woman whose name I vaguely recalled as Tiffany, spoke of Celeste's unwavering loyalty and beautiful heart, words that grated on my ears. Then it was my turn. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat. I took a deep breath, clutching the wine glass in one hand and the manila envelope in the other. The weight of it felt monumental. I pushed back my chair and slowly rose. All eyes turned to me. A hush fell over the room. I walked to the microphone, my legs feeling strangely detached from my body. I cleared my throat, my voice surprisingly steady. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Evelyn Hayes, Arthur's mother. I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room, finally resting on Celeste, whose bright smile seemed to waver for a fraction of a second before reasserting itself. Arthur has always been a son of immense integrity, kindness, and a truly generous spirit. As a mother, all I have ever wished for him is happiness, a deep, abiding love, and a partner who truly cherishes him for who he is. I took another breath, the words carefully chosen, each one a prelude to the storm. But a mother's greatest responsibility, I continued, my voice gaining strength, is to protect her child from harm, even when that harm comes disguised as love. A ripple went through the room. The smiles on the guests' faces began to fade. Arthur's radiant joy dissolved into a look of confusion, his brow furrowing as he looked at me, then at Celeste. The festive energy of the room shifted, replaced by an uncomfortable tension, a palpable sense of unease. I looked directly at Celeste, her eyes now wide with a dawning horror, her perfect smile completely gone. I tightened my grip on the manila envelope. So, Celeste, I said, my voice clear and unwavering, would you like to tell everyone here about your first husband, Mr. Thompson? Or should I? What would you do if you discovered your son's fiancée was a serial gold digger? Right on his wedding day. The story only gets more intense from here. Don't miss a moment. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to follow the rest of this unbelievable journey. A deafening silence fell over the grand ballroom, thick and suffocating. Every single one of the 300 guests was utterly motionless, their eyes darting between me and Celeste. Celeste's face, which a moment ago had been radiant with joy, was now completely white, as if all the blood had drained from it. Her carefully constructed smile had vanished, replaced by a mask of sheer terror. Arthur, his face a mixture of confusion and growing alarm, finally spoke, his voice hushed, almost a plea. Mom, what are you doing? I looked at him, my heart aching with the pain I knew I was about to inflict, but firm in my resolve. I'm saving your life, Arthur, I responded, my voice clear and steady. As I spoke, I slowly, deliberately pulled the first document from the manila envelope. It was a certified copy of a marriage certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the stunned crowd, holding up the document for all to see. Allow me to introduce you to Celeste Michelle Grant's first husband, Mr. David Thompson. He was 53 years old when he married a 21-year-old Celeste. Their marriage lasted less than 2 years. The divorce settlement, a tidy $500,000. Gasps rippled through the room. A few people began to whisper, their voices growing louder as the shock wore off. Celeste's maid of honor, Tiffany, tried to discreetly pull Celeste back down into her chair, but Celeste remained frozen, her eyes wide and fixed on me. I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word, each exposed truth. And then there was Mr. Edward Davies, 45 years old, a tech executive. Their marriage, again, lasted just under 2 years. His divorce settlement to Celeste? A generous $700,000. Celeste finally found her voice, a strangled whisper. Stop, she pleaded, but I was beyond stopping. The words poured out of me, fueled by a mother's fury and a need for justice. It seems to be a pattern, doesn't it? I asked the room, my gaze unwavering as it swept over the horrified faces. Older wealthy men, short marriages, substantial settlements, and each time a new name, a new identity to erase the past and prepare for the next love of her life. The room erupted. Shock, disbelief, and outright outrage filled the air. Some guests were on their feet, murmuring angrily. Celeste's parents, seated near her, looked utterly horrified, their faces etched with a devastating mix of shame and confusion. Arthur's face, once full of radiant joy, was now ashen. His eyes, wet with a devastating mix of shock and betrayal, flickered from me to Celeste, then back to the documents in my hand. His world, his future, was crumbling before his very eyes. Celeste finally found her voice, a raw, desperate scream that cut through the cacophony. "You're lying! She's lying! This is all lies! She's always hated me!" I held up the certified marriage certificates and divorce decrees, letting the papers flutter slightly in the tension-filled air. "These are not lies, Celeste. These are public record, easily verifiable." So a few security guards, looking bewildered by the sudden chaos, began to move towards the head table, but it was too late. The truth, raw and undeniable, had already been heard by every single one of the 300 guests. There was no unhearing it. Celeste turned to Arthur, her eyes now filled with a desperate, pleading terror. "Please, Arthur, you have to believe me. Your mother is trying to destroy us. She's always been jealous." But Arthur wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the documents in my hands, on the undeniable proof that was tearing his reality apart. His voice, when it came, was broken, barely a whisper. "Is it true, Celeste?" For the first time since I had begun speaking, Celeste was rendered utterly speechless. Her manipulative facade, so carefully constructed over years, so polished and practiced, finally shattered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked around the room at the horrified, disgusted faces, then back at Arthur, whose eyes now held nothing but profound hurt. Then, without another word, she abruptly stood, her elegant wedding dress sweeping around her as she spun on her heel. She bolted from the ballroom, a whirlwind of white silk and shattered dreams. The grand double doors swung shut behind her with a soft thud, leaving an absolute chilling silence in her wake. The absence of her presence was almost as loud as the chaos that had preceded it. The guests remained frozen, their gazes still fixed on the empty space where the bride had been. The champagne, the lavish meal, the meticulously planned celebration, all lay forgotten, irrelevant. Finally, Arthur slowly turned his head to look at me. His eyes, once full of adoration, were now devoid of warmth, filled instead with a devastating mix of shock, anger, and profound sadness. He didn't speak, but his gaze conveyed a clear, cutting message. I had just destroyed his entire world. The victory, if it could even be called that, felt like a devastating loss. The weeks following the wedding disaster were the longest of my life, each day a relentless ache. The silence from Arthur was deafening, a gaping void where our once vibrant, constant connection had been. He had moved out of his house, changed his phone number, blocked me on all social media platforms, and even sent a cold, formal email through his office stating that I was no longer welcome there. It was as if I had ceased to exist for him. I knew deep down that I had done the right thing, that I had saved him from a terrible fate, but the cost was immeasurable. I had saved my son, but I had lost him. My days were filled with a gnawing emptiness, punctuated only by calls from Detective Miller. He was still quietly tracking Celeste, and his updates, while validating my actions, only intensified the pain of Arthur's estrangement. "Mrs. Hayes," he reported one afternoon, "Celeste has been busy. Attempted to access Arthur's bank accounts under the pretense of being his wife. Also showed up at his house with a moving truck, claiming she was there to collect wedding gifts." The audacity was breathtaking. "She's desperate, isn't she?" I asked, a bitter taste in my mouth. "Profoundly," Miller confirmed. "Her debts are astronomical. The marriage to Arthur wasn't just a preference, it was an absolute necessity for her survival. She was backed into a corner." He shared more grim details that solidified the true danger Arthur had faced. Thompson, Celeste's first ex-husband, had spoken openly to Miller's team, revealing how Celeste had systematically isolated him from his children and friends, slowly gaining control over his finances, all while weaving a web of emotional dependence. The stories were chillingly similar to the manipulation Arthur was vulnerable to. Then, Mr. Davies' attorney, now, after being shown the irrefutable evidence, revealed Celeste had even claimed pregnancy during their divorce, a desperate false ploy to negotiate a larger settlement, only to have it proven untrue by medical records. The full, dangerous extent of Celeste's manipulation became terrifyingly clear. She wasn't just a gold digger. She was a predator, cunning and ruthless. Willing to destroy lives for her own gain, my chest tightened with a cold dread, imagining what Arthur would have endured. My heartbreak over losing him to silence was tempered by the overwhelming relief that he had been spared from her insidious clutches. 3 weeks to the day after the wedding, a harsh knock rattled my front door. I answered it to find Celeste standing on my porch, a stark contrast to the radiant bride she had been. Her expensive wedding dress was gone, replaced by disheveled clothes. Her hair was unkempt, and her eyes, once sparkling with ambition, were now hollow and desperate. "Evelyn," she said, her voice hoarse, "I need to talk to Arthur. You have to help me. Please." My heart hardened. The weeks of pain, the silence from my son, flashed before my eyes. "Celeste," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You need to leave Arthur alone. You've done enough damage." Her desperation quickly morphed into rage. Her face contorted, a mask of fury replacing the pathetic pleading. "You bitter old woman," she spat, her voice rising. "You did this. You sabotaged us because you couldn't stand Arthur being with someone young and beautiful. You couldn't stand sharing him." I met her furious gaze calmly. "Oh, Celeste," I said, a weary sigh escaping my lips. "I already knew everything before the wedding. I heard you. I heard you call Arthur a meal ticket. I heard you planning to use him, planning to discard me. I heard you calculating how long I had to live so you could inherit." The color drained from her face once more. The venom in her eyes flickered, replaced by a momentary naked shock. Her mask slipped completely, revealing the cold fury that lay beneath, the raw desperation of a cornered animal. For a second, she was truly speechless. Then she tried to regain composure, a flimsy attempt to salvage her image. "That was wedding stress. You don't understand the pressure." I shook my head slowly, cutting her off. "No, Celeste, that wasn't wedding stress. That was who you are. You were already hurting Arthur. You just hadn't finished the job yet." Her shoulders slumped. The last vestiges of her anger seemed to drain away, replaced by a profound, desolate weariness. "He was my last chance," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper, empty of all its former bravado. The raw vulnerability of that confession, the sheer, profound desperation in her eyes momentarily pierced through my resolve. A flicker of something akin to pity stirred within me, a recognition of the bottomless pit she found herself in. But that flicker was quickly extinguished by the memory of Arthur's heartbroken face, the silence in my life, the depths of her deception. She had made her choices. I simply looked at her, then slowly, deliberately, closed the door. The weeks stretched into months, each one heavier than the last, burdened by Arthur's unyielding silence. My house, once filled with the echoes of his laughter and the warmth of his visits, felt hollow and vast. I missed him terribly, a constant ache in my chest that no amount of gardening or quiet evenings could soothe. I had saved him, but at what cost? 4 weeks after the aborted wedding, unable to bear the silence any longer, I swallowed my pride. I called Ben, Arthur's best man, his oldest and most trusted friend. He answered on the third ring, his voice tinged with a weariness that matched my own. "Ben, it's Evelyn," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "How is Arthur?" A long sigh echoed through the phone. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, and the formality of his address sent a fresh pang through me. "He's not doing well. He's like a ghost. He's punishing himself." "Does he understand that I was protecting him?" I asked, desperation lacing my words. "Does he understand what she truly was?" "He understands Celeste lied, Mrs. Hayes," Ben clarified, his tone carefully neutral. "He knows she was a con artist. He saw the documents, but he feels like you made the decision for him. You humiliated him publicly, in front of everyone he cares about." My heart sank. "He's ashamed, isn't he? Deeply, Ben confirmed. He feels like he was played for a fool, and to have that revealed in such a public way. His pride is shattered. He can't face anyone right now, let alone you. I tried to defend my actions, the words tumbling out in a rush. But Ben, you heard her. You know how cold she was, how cruel her intentions were. She was planning to destroy his life, his finances. I had to do something. Ben listened patiently. I know, Mrs. Hayes, I believe you. But Arthur's pride is a powerful thing. He's hurt, and right now he can't see past that. He paused, then added, he needs time, a lot of time. He's not going to forgive this easily. 2 months passed, an agonizing blur of isolation and worry. Then, Detective Miller called again. Mrs. Hayes, he said, his voice holding a hint of grim satisfaction. Celeste Grant has been arrested in Nevada. Romance scam, an elderly widower. She was caught trying to drain his retirement accounts. The news spread quickly. It even made local headlines. A small article confirming the arrest of a serial con artist, detailing her previous marriages and settlements. For a moment, a wave of vindication washed over me. It was absolute proof. Everything I had said, everything I had done was unequivocally true. She was exactly who I said she was. I desperately hoped this public revelation would finally reach Arthur, that it would be the final piece that helped him understand, to forgive. But instead, his response was to plan a move out of state, to further distance himself, not just from Celeste's ghost, but from me. I had successfully saved my son from a dangerous predator, but in doing so, I had utterly lost him. The bitter irony was a constant companion. 4 months after the wedding, a knock at my door startled me. It was Ben. He stood on my porch, looking even more tired than before, his shoulders slumped. Mrs. Hayes, he began, Arthur doesn't know I'm here. He'd kill me if he knew. I gestured him inside, my heart thudding with a mixture of fear and hope. What is it, Ben? Is he okay? Ben shook his head, running a hand through his hair. No, he's not all right. He's destroying himself, Mrs. Hayes. He barely eats. He works constantly, isolating himself. He's still punishing himself. But with Celeste's arrest, I pressed, surely that's made him realize. Ben hesitated, then took a deep breath. There's something else you don't know. Something that really set him back. About 3 weeks after the wedding, Celeste's lawyer contacted Arthur's. She was claiming joint assets. My brow furrowed. But they weren't married. How could she? She had documentation, Ben explained, his voice low. Jointed deposits into what she claimed was a wedding fund. Money Arthur had given her for various things, even some of your contributions. And proof of joint purchases on credit cards Arthur had given her for wedding expenses, for things for their supposed new home. My blood ran cold. The extent of her calculated deception, even after the wedding collapsed, was staggering. So he had to pay her? Ben nodded, a grim expression on his face. Yes, to finally be rid of her, to prevent a drawn-out legal battle that would have dragged his name through the mud even more. He had to pay her $15,000, just to make her go away. A fresh wave of horror washed over me. Even after I had exposed her, even after the public humiliation, Celeste had still managed to extract money from my son. Arthur's pain, his shame, his self-punishment, it all clicked into a devastatingly clear picture. He wasn't just heartbroken, he felt utterly violated, personally and financially. The true cost of protecting him, it seemed, was far higher than I had ever imagined. Ben, looking grave, took a slow sip of the tea I had offered him, the silence in my living room heavy with unspoken pain. That $15,000 was just the beginning, Mrs. Hayes, he finally said, his voice low. It actually gets worse. My stomach churned. Worse? How could it be worse? Remember Mr. Davies, Celeste's second ex-husband? Ben asked. I nodded, a cold knot forming in my gut. Well, his law firm contacted Arthur. Apparently, Mr. Davies had been tracking Celeste quietly for years, ever since his own divorce. He'd compiled extensive evidence of her systematic financial manipulation, a pattern she'd perfected. Ben then laid out a chilling tale. Mr. Davies had shared with Arthur a detailed dossier of documents, bank records, credit reports, and legal filings that meticulously chronicled how Celeste had siphoned over $100,000 from him during their brief marriage, not just through the settlement, but through countless hidden charges, loans that were never repaid, and purchases made on shared accounts for which she claimed no responsibility. Arthur had seen all the documents, the irrefutable proof of how much worse it truly could have been. A cold shiver ran down my spine. $100,000. My mind flashed back to the small sums I'd seen listed in the investigator's report, the tips of a monstrous iceberg. And there's more, Ben continued, his gaze unwavering. Mr. Davies also informed Arthur about Celeste's fake pregnancy claim during their divorce proceedings. That's why he had kept such meticulous records. He knew what she was capable of. My breath hitched. Fake pregnancy. The words echoed in the quiet room, twisting my heart with a sickening dread. Arthur, my sweet son, had always longed for children. It was a dream he'd often spoken of, a future he envisioned with genuine tenderness. Celeste would have used that, twisted it, weaponized his deepest desires against him. I felt physically ill at the thought, a wave of nausea washing over me. He could have been trapped, couldn't he? I whispered, my voice thick with horror. Trapped by a child that wasn't even real, or worse, used as leverage against him. Ben nodded solemnly. Mr. Davies was convinced Celeste was building up to a similar pregnancy lie with Arthur if the marriage had lasted longer. He saw all the signs. A profound sense of relief, mixed with a renewed wave of maternal agony, washed over me. The depth of Celeste's depravity was beyond anything I had imagined. Arthur had truly been standing on the precipice of ruin. Ben cleared his throat. Mrs. Hayes, he said, looking directly at me, I'm telling you all of this because Arthur finally understands. He understands what you saved him from. All of it. My eyes welled up. Then why the silence? It's still pride, Mrs. Hayes, Ben explained, a hint of sadness in his voice. And shame. He's embarrassed. He's embarrassed that his own mother saw through her so clearly when he, a successful, intelligent man, was completely fooled. He's not angry at you for exposing her, Mrs. Hayes. He's angry at himself, for not believing you, for cutting you out. The words hit me with the force of a revelation. All this time I had imagined his anger was directed at me, at my public betrayal of his trust. But it was self-loathing, a bruised ego, a sense of profound foolishness. A fresh wave of tears streamed down my face, but this time, they were mixed with a flicker of hope. He asked me something, Mrs. Hayes. Ben continued, his voice softer now. He asked me if you would ever forgive him. I gasped, a sob escaping my lips. Forgive him? My son? The thought that he believed that I could ever harbor such a thing for him was heartbreaking. Forgive him? I choked out, tears blurring my vision. I could never hate my son. Never. Ben nodded, a faint, hopeful smile touching his lips. I told him that. He didn't believe me. He then told me more. Mr. Davies' lawyer is filing new comprehensive charges against Celeste for financial fraud, leveraging all that evidence. Arthur will likely be called to testify. It's going to be rough, but it's the right thing to do. He stood to leave, pausing at the door. Mrs. Hayes, he said, his voice gentle. Every single person at that wedding, every single guest, has figured out by now that you were the hero. They might not have shown it immediately, but the truth always comes out. You saved him, and they know it. I was left alone in my quiet living room, the weight of Ben's words settling over me. Hero, villain, victim, predator. The roles had shifted so many times, the lines blurred by pain and deception. The irony of our mutual suffering, Arthur's and mine, now became clear. We had both been victims of Celeste, just in different ways, and we both needed forgiveness. I picked up my phone, my fingers still trembling, but now with a different kind of resolve. I found Arthur's number, the one Ben had slipped me before he left, and dialed. It went straight to voicemail. Arthur, I began, my voice thick with emotion, but clear. It's Mom. I just wanted to say that I love you more than words can express. No matter what, you are my son, and nothing, no amount of silence, no amount of distance can ever change that. Our family means everything to me. Always, and I'll be here, whenever you're ready. I hung up, a silent prayer forming in my heart. The first step had been taken. 3 days later, the scent of pot roast, Arthur's childhood favorite, filled my kitchen. I was stirring the gravy, humming a tuneless melody, when a hesitant knock echoed through the quiet house. My heart leaped into my throat. I walked to the front door, my breath catching as I saw him. Arthur, he stood on my porch, thinner than I remembered, his shoulders slumped, his face etched with a visible nervousness that made him look like a lost child. His eyes, though still clouded with a lingering sadness, held a flicker of the warmth I had so desperately missed. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, the silence thick with unspoken emotions. Then, without a word, I opened my arms. He stepped into my embrace, clinging to me as if I were his only anchor. His body shook as deep, wrenching sobs racked him. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered, his voice broken, muffled against my shoulder. "I am so sorry." I held him tight, stroking his hair. "I'm sorry too, Arthur," I murmured, the words coming easily now. "I'm sorry for the embarrassment, for taking away your choice, for hurting you." He pulled back slightly, looking into my eyes, his own red and swollen. "Don't apologize for saving my life, Mom," he insisted, his voice firm despite the tears. "Please, don't." Inside, as the aroma of the pot rose slowly calmed the tense air, Arthur began to talk. He admitted Ben had visited him, laid out all the facts, and finally broken through his wall of pride and shame. He spoke of the deep shame he felt for his silence, for believing Celeste's lies over his own mother's desperate pleas. "I know it must have been so hard for you to hear all that," I said gently, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I understood your hurt. I truly did." He shook his head, a fresh wave of self-reproach washing over his face. "No, Mom, I was a coward. I let my ego, my embarrassment, take precedence over our relationship. Over you." I squeezed his hand. "We both made mistakes, Arthur. I could have handled it differently, perhaps more privately, but we're here now, and that's what truly matters." He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a single sheet covered in elegant, looping handwriting. "This," he said, his voice trembling. "Ben found this in a box of Celeste's things she left at my place after everything. It's a list. She called it Phase 1. My heart pounded as I took the paper. The title, chillingly, was Phase 1. Beneath it, a methodical, bulleted list of plans. Get on bank accounts. Begin therapy for Arthur. Unhealthy attachment to mother. Plan lavish honeymoon. Expenses from joint account. Research mother's health history, insurance policies. Subtly convince him mother needs independence. Assisted living." I felt a cold dread spread through me as I read the final bullet point. Assisted living. She was planning to warehouse me, to systematically remove me from Arthur's life, all while draining him financially. It was a cold, calculated plan, written down with chilling detachment. "Phase 2 involved fake pregnancies, Mom," Arthur continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "And by Phase 3, I would have been completely dependent on her, isolated from everyone, probably even broken." He looked at me, his eyes wide with a horrifying realization. "She planned to destroy my life in less than 2 years, and I would have helped her do it." "I knew," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "A mother knows when someone doesn't truly love her child. I sensed she saw you as a project, a means to an end, not a person." "I was so blind," he admitted, his voice raw with shame. "And I punished you for trying to save me." He then told me about Celeste's upcoming trial for financial fraud, the charges brought by Mr. Davies' lawyer. "I'm testifying, Mom," he said, his jaw tight. "It's going to be public. More humiliation." "I'll be there," I declared, my voice firm. "In the front row, every single day, and I'll defend your character to anyone who dares to question it. You're my son. I'd do anything for you." We talked late into the evening, filling in the painful gaps of the past 4 months. He spoke of his therapy sessions, of the slow, arduous process of rebuilding his self-worth. I shared my own experiences, volunteering at a local women's shelter, finding purpose in helping others escape manipulative relationships. As the night drew to a close, Arthur looked at me, his eyes clear and resolute. "You'll never lose me again, Mom," he promised, his voice earnest. "Family isn't about blood sometimes. It's about who stands by you, who sees the truth when you can't." A month later, I was true to my word. I sat in the front row of the courthouse, a silent, unwavering presence as Arthur bravely took the stand. Celeste, pale and defiant, glared at us, but her power was gone. The evidence was overwhelming, a damning testament to her years of calculated fraud. She was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years in prison. Leaving the courthouse, Arthur hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. "Thank you for seeing the truth and for showing me what real love looks like." 6 months later, Arthur moved back into his old house. He had met someone, Olivia, a kind widow he'd connected with at a grief support group. She was gentle, unassuming, with a quiet strength that emanated from her. I watched them interact, observing the real affection, the genuine kindness in her eyes when she looked at him, and the sincere warmth she extended to me. One sunny afternoon, as we gardened together, Arthur told me, "I've told Olivia everything, Mom, about Celeste, about the wedding, about us." He paused, a shy smile touching his lips. "She thinks you're amazing. She says she wishes she had a mother-in-law like you." Then with a twinkle in his eye, he added, "Olivia and I are planning our wedding, and I want you to be fully involved, Mom, every step of the way." My heart swelled, a joyous tear escaping. "And," he continued, a deep seriousness returning to his voice, "I want you to give the first toast at our reception. Because you, Mom, are the reason I learned the difference between love and manipulation. You taught me what it truly means to love and be loved." I hugged him tight, my heart overflowing. The pain of the past year had been immense, a devastating storm that had threatened to tear us apart. But from the ashes of that experience, a new, stronger relationship had blossomed, built on honesty, forgiveness, and an invaluable understanding of true love.